Yeah? All right. Ready to go? Okay. All right. Calling this meeting to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. First order of business. We couldn't do this last month because we didn't have a quorum, so we can do it this month. We need to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, April 7th. No need to approve the minutes of the meeting of May because, again, we didn't have a quorum. But anyway, I hope everybody's had a chance to look at those notes. And is there a motion to approve? Yep. Yeah. Christine, and a second, Bill?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, aye, aye. Okay. They are approved. Okay. We are ready for reports. Oh, I thought I heard thunder. Tammy, I'm not sure what order of reports you wanted to go in, but reports.
I can start.
Might as well start.
Good evening, everybody. The Parks and Recreation Department has a lot of activity going on. It's a really busy time of the year, obviously given the spring programming and ramping up for summer programming, and we have a ton of great park projects going on and park impacts that are happening out there too. So I submitted a report for May and June. There's an outline of a lot of the more popular programs. You'll see there's a lot of things that are sold out and continuing to sell out. It's a great problem to have, but we are always looking for creative ways to add new sessions, new dates, and what have you of the various programs. As you will see, there's continued popularity with our preschool programming, overall with our t-ball programming, our soccer programming, and then of course our champions programming has been widely popular and continues to grow. This spring we had a lot of positive feedback with our ultimate frisbee program, Griffin volleyball clinic, the skateboarding clinic, indoor tennis, outdoor tennis. Of course we still have pickleball going on. And a lot of other things that are happening out there. And just as a little tidbit from the United States Tennis Association, just in the last 2 years, there's been a 30% rise in tennis, and there's been a 40% rise in pickleball. No surprise there, of course, but obviously those are two competing, spaces. And we continue to try and be creative and balance all the usage that happens out there. We know we have a big increase in pickleball play happening in particular at Philippone, and trying to balance that with a lot of the tennis programming and manage that, especially as the weather is much nicer right now. In doing that requires a lot of juggling. So we also have summer camps, as you'll see, are either sold out, closed. Unfortunately, adding new sessions has been difficult because the procurement of staff continues to be a challenge. So with Radnor Day Camp, we did close down the camp about a month and a half ago just due to the inability to procure a larger amount of staff. We're also, we have some space constraints too at Radnor Elementary, so we're managing those as well and still trying to work through our spacing allocation. So we wanted to proceed with caution in terms of the amount of campers in that regard as well. Even though we do tend to use a lot of outdoor spaces, we do rely on the indoor spaces, of course. If we end up having, the 90-plus degree days, it does require us to go indoors, and we much appreciate that space. So we're trying to find a balance there as well. This spring, we've had some really great events that have taken place, particularly last month with the Wheels of Wayne. This was our 8 great years of Wheels of Wayne. After being on hiatus for 2 years, we came back. We had a Sunday that was originally slated to be a little bit of a rainy day. We ended up going with the event, and it ended up being truly amazing. It was a huge success. Always difficult to gauge, roughly how many people are out there, but we figured just at least 3,000 in attendance. There's some really great pictures and video out on the website. And we had motorcycles, trucks, vintage vehicles, all the way back to really the 1800s, because we had Radnor Historical Society there with their covered wagon for the first time, so that was exciting. A lot of modern vehicles, some Rolls Royces and decked out Mercedes and all kinds of things. So foreigns, domestics, you name it, we had it there. It was really a fun show this year, so getting it back after 2 years was pretty remarkable. And our best in show car actually ended up being a vehicle that traveled all the way from Ohio. It was a 1948 Cadillac sedanette, and they came here to visit their kids who live in and around the region, and they ended up winning Wheels of Wayne. It was a really amazing car, as a matter of fact. So there's pictures, as I mentioned, out on the website if you want to take a look at it. There's always a lot of fun going on at the show. Teresa's Cafe won our pizza contest. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough contestants to do the pulled pork contest this year, which is another one of the annual traditions, but it was a whole lot of fun. Radnor Fire Company was there with their 1954 Mack fire truck. The Willows Park Preserve took part, League of Women Voters, and just a whole plate of lots of sponsors and lots of community businesses and vendors. So we had a whole lot of fun. And I know Commissioner Farhi helped us out with the pizza contest, so we are very thankful for him for joining in. Commissioner Mulroney was there with her Mustang, her convertible Mustang, so we were really proud to have a lot of folks join us for the event and a beautiful day. We also had the Emlyn Tennell poster dedication event at Emlyn Tennell Park, which was a huge success despite the heat. I think it was about 100 degrees, and it was a successful day. The U.S. Navy League and the Coast Guard Foundation bestowed the township with a beautiful graphic panel. I have a copy of the program that I provided to all the Parks Board members, and that is mounted down there at the park right now. If you get an opportunity and you want to go take a look at it, it will be there for years to come to share the legacy and all the great information that folks will hopefully learn and carry on and pass through generations about the great Emlyn Tennell. So that was a really exciting event. And then there was a gathering afterwards at the American Legion, so we want to thank them for all their hospitality and all their time and efforts as well put towards the event. Some of the upcoming events that are going to be happening, there's going to be a park concert, the Danny Ocean Band over at Clemacrone Park. It's going to take place on Sunday, June 19th at 5 p.m. It's a free event. The Garrett Hill 4th of July Parade and Celebration at Clemacrone Park, of course, on Monday, July 4th. Very excited about not only having the parade back this year, but also, obviously, the park celebration event that goes along with it. We also have the second annual Odoriccio Park Music and Movie Night that'll be taking place on Friday, July 8th. That's in its second year. Has emerged into a really great tradition, features a lot of local musicians. We're looking forward to that, as well as the movie Soul, which will be shown afterwards, after the concerts. So that event starts at 6 o'clock p.m. We also have the 10th annual Night at the Ballpark and Wiffle Ball Classic, along with fireworks at Enke Park. So that'll be coming up on Wednesday, July 20th. That is another event that has been a great tradition. Obviously, 10 years is a long time, great milestone. A couple years ago, it won a great award for programming and excellence through the Pennsylvania Recreation and Parks Association. And then we also have the Unity in the Community event. The date has been set for that. That's the annual Highland Avenue Block Party. It'll take place on Saturday, August 27th, with a rain date of Sunday, August 28th. So in addition to that, as I mentioned, there's just a lot of park projects that are going on. I know we can talk about those and elaborate on those later. I know a lot of them situate within our agenda. So there are places that are under construction in a lot of areas, like Cowan, Odoriccio, Radnor Memorial. Just always asking folks to, be safe and pay attention to the areas and the signage there in terms of everything that's going on. And that concludes my report for May and June, if you have any questions.
Yeah, always a lot hard to follow up on that. So just one more thing I would like to add, and that is, I don't know if it's a parks thing, but it definitely is a Radnor Township thing, is the Wayne Music Festival, which will be this Saturday, June 11th. So it starts around 2 o'clock. So I guess the roads are going to be closed around there, so everybody knows. But I've been there in the past. It's a lot of fun. And if you're able to make it out, a great way to support and some of the great Wayne businesses, and hopefully see some friends and some neighbors. So that's what I have. Thanks.
That's good. Nobody from the school board. We haven't heard from them for a while. Well, Shade Tree. We still have that issue to work out. I should be prepared for this. Tammy, do you know off the top of your head when their next meeting is?
I do. I brought the calendar
Thank you.
this month after 2 months of not having that date.
If I can
So
actually do it
June
this time.
22nd is the next meeting for June. And then, July will be July 27th coming up. And I know that there's some legislation that's underway to change some of the dynamics as soon as I can get a copy draft of what that information is and learn a little bit more about when that's going to go to the board. I suspect it might be in July. We'll make sure we get some of that information out to the board so they can see what that is and just know what to expect.
Wonderful, because I think I might be away during July. Okay, so co equals June. Quinn equals.
So, Bill, you're going to take July?
I will.
Thank you.
27?
27th.
I'm going to forget that.
Thank you both for that.
All right. Of course, I wrote that on last month's notes. Any other reports? I don't think so. Okay. New business. Do we have any new business, folks? Got plenty of old business.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to old business. Odoricio Park Improvements Planning Discussion. Let's start us off, Tammy.
Oh, sure. We had a great meeting, last meeting, I believe. A little low attendance. I know it was one of the more beautiful days in May, so probably the reason why we had a little bit of a lack of attendance.
I think there was a big basketball game or something too that night.
Yeah, the Sixers were playing that night,
Yeah.
so I think that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
And it, like I said, it was one of the nicer days in a while. So we were at the RTCA for our last meeting, and we had some really good discussion. We heard from residents, and I know that I think we were only joined by about 12 folks, but I know we had a lot of information that we heard. Demonstrated a lot of, commitment and appreciation folks have for their neighborhood park, which was great to hear. And what I can do is I can just read through some of the notes. I know, Andy, you took very copious and detailed notes and just sort of talk about those a little bit, which were provided to the board, even though we didn't have a quorum to provide a meeting minutes for last month. But there were some notes I tried to put together just to encapsulate, what went on there. As a matter of fact, Natalie took them, and I just kind of couched them into a little bit of a minutes document. So I know we talked about the basketball court renovations taking place. I think overall that was a good, vision for the park, and everybody was excited about the project starting to finally come together. There was a discussion about the bathroom facility with the comfort station and continued evaluation of those conditions and evaluation of, potential location, maybe being shifted to a different area within the park. The addition of a pavilion or covered area that maybe could accommodate some group gathering, kind of something similar maybe to Clemacrone or Fenimore Woods, that we haven't, agreed on what that would look like, but just that could be part of the future vision. Maybe some grills and things like that to be able to allow for cookouts and things. Maybe some of the community events that take place, in and around Highland Avenue could expand into those areas. We talked about the playground incorporating, new equipment, larger inclusive equipment. The parking lots overall, evaluation of the conditions, the stormwater management, the organization of them. I know we had some discussion on whether or not all of them are necessary. How would they be utilized? We know that there's a lot of neighborhood parking going on in those parking spaces. How can we better manage that? We talked about the ingress and egress coming from Highland Avenue onto Church and Fairview being disorganized, not really accessible. There's not really clear accessibility to the park and signage and gateway. something we definitely wanted to look closer at, as well as Highland Avenue, even though that would be separate to this park project. I just want to point it out because I think it's something that's important to consider, at least ancillary or parallel maybe in some way to this project, but overall street improvements in terms of the flow. There's a lot of visibility issues. There's a lot of cars that are there. Tough to see pedestrian traffic, tough to, always find the entrance to the park. Just so overall, lack of beautification, things like that too, that could possibly happen in and around that area. There was also discussion about potential multi-use trail within the wooded area, and what that might look like as maybe, hiking path or walking paths and things like that. The potential for expanding community events or taking some community events that take place in some of the other parks, maybe, during the seasonal months, move them to Odoricio, move them around. I know that came up. Creating a potential water park, like a spray ground with, sprayers and things like that. A tetherball area was discussed. Overall drainage and stormwater management throughout the entire park. We know we have a lot of erosion on the hillsides. The tree roots are being exposed. Those trees are probably being adversely impacted as a result of that, so there needs to be some consideration on how we can care for them moving forward, save them moving forward, and figure out a new way to, overall potentially grade and or landscape those areas or fill those areas to help that. There was discussion about potential seating that could take place, like seating looking down into the park for folks that come and watch soccer and experience events and things like that. Increased overall landscaping, beautification, and native trees, maintaining trees, enhancing the park signage overall. I know we talked about dogs, continued concern for dogs at the park. Increasing the signage, maybe adding, fines to signs and things like that. I know that came up. We talked about it. Correcting the address for the park. I think we talked a little bit about how the current address of 418 Fairview takes you down Highland Avenue and then down Fairview and or Church into the park. Can be, takes you around, like in a roundabout way, through the neighborhood. And is that really necessary? So, is there a way to correct that by having, the West Wayne Avenue address established in some way, which we are actually looking into. And we can talk about some of that when I'm finished. But I think we said basically all areas are up for improvement, really with the exception of the baseball field in a sense of not, we want to improve the field potentially, especially if Little League or some of the organizations are in and looking for some, improvements there. But recognizing that the baseball field's probably not going to go anywhere. We're not going to, re-establish it in some way or move it around. But that all of the rest of the areas really are fair game to the improvements. So, and that's kind of where we are with, I think, a good blank slate, but a lot of really great ideas. And I'm sure there's a lot more ideas that sit out there from folks that we haven't heard from. Right. So I just, for anybody who's watching tonight that maybe decided not to come or maybe just listen to it on their phones or something, we want to continue to encourage folks to call us, email us, join the email list so that we can include you in all of the future meetings. We want to have a night where we go out to the park here soon and walk and talk, because I think there's something to be said for being at the park and actually looking at some of the features and things that are out there. So that's really important, that we can communicate with folks and encourage them to reach out, tell your neighbors. If there are other ways we can reach the neighbors or reach folks, we certainly want to do that. I know we started this off with a mailer. We did 2 of them actually that went into the homes, encouraged people to join the mail lists. I think we really need to get more participation. I think that's critical. And again, our night, on May 12th could have just been, a lot of things going on and folks not able to attend, and it's summer now and, it's so nice out. So I just want to make sure folks know that we're really interested in talking more and having the discussion, because the park is really unique, actually. And in participating at the park as a visitor, I've been there as the visiting team before, believe it or not, and coming from my son's Little League and playing. Folks outside really appreciate the park. They think it is very unique. They like the fact that you can sit and watch the games, at the top of the hill, and it's nice, it's relaxing. It's very wooded and green, especially this time of year. So I think the park does have a very unique identity. It's just now, really trying to refine what's there and bring it to life and give it those improvements that, it hasn't had for so many years. Obviously, we've tried to give a lot of attention. It's been something that has been contemplated, year after year in terms of funding. It's, the park sat in some way, shape, or form in the context of the annual capital budget. I know it was contemplated when money was borrowed in 2016. For some reason it didn't happen, whether that ties back to politics or what happened there. But I think everybody's really committed and wired in right now and interested in getting this park where it needs to be and where it deserves to be, and really is a great future that lies ahead, and it's something very exciting to be part of.
Tammy, have you gotten any input, email or telephone calls or anything since that meeting, or?
I've gotten some follow-ups from the residents who attended, just
Okay, good.
reiterating some of their feedback. Certainly have been collecting that, so a lot of that feedback's consistent, with what we heard that night. And I think folks are just really eager to be part of the future and talk more and engage more and be heard.
Yeah, I thought we had a lot, you just went through them, a lot of really great ideas. But I do want to make sure we hear from a lot of people. You can get a lot of great ideas from 4 or 5 people, which we did, or 6 or 8 or however many were there, but we want to be sure that we have that everybody knows they've been given an opportunity to speak and say their piece, so we get a sense of what are priorities, or, what are the most popular ideas, and what are some downsides that may not have been identified. So getting that breadth of input is really important, and I know that we're going to schedule another roundtable-ish type meeting sometime probably in the fall, I guess, at this point. So hopefully that will have a larger attendance.
Yeah, and I think we'd like to do a park walk too, even
park walk, I
if
think, would be
it's
really great.
continued string of informal park walks. Maybe if it's multiple, if we can, it would be really great if we could squeeze, I think, at least 2 of them in between now and the end of summer.
That'd be great.
At least just to get out there and, give folks an option. If one date doesn't work, maybe the other does, recognizing there's, vacations and things like that. And in the meantime, what we're starting to work on too is, I had briefly mentioned, just correcting that address issue. So I am working with our solicitor to see what we can do to correct the address for the park, so that the dedicated address for the park is no longer 418, or 418 can be ancillary to the park, but a dedicated address of West Wayne Avenue to bring people there, I think would help with the traffic flow on Highland Avenue, which again, I think is just another issue we want to address.
Yeah.
That's kind of separate but part of. So that's important. We also have the ownership discussion. I know we met with our solicitor, and we did establish that Radnor School District does still own the 110-acre parcel that includes the baseball field and the front part of the parking lot. And then the township owns sort of the strip that comprises I'll call it the third baseline parking area, the sort of parking area, the playground, the bathroom, and then it's sort of like a flag shape that goes back to where the basketball courts are and the wooded area are, so that the other 15 acres, if you will, belongs to the township. And we had them pull the deeds and go through all that information. It was consistent with what we learned in 2012 when we had a Cressa real estate study done on behalf of Properties for the Township. So I know the school district believe that they perhaps maybe didn't own the land, so we're trying to understand what they discovered. I think they did a real estate assessment too a few years ago, and we're going to try and work that out and make sure we get that resolved. But as of right now, in our understanding, that there is that dual ownership. But unlike properties like Emlyn-Tennell or North Wayne, we don't have a lease arrangement of any sort. So maybe there's a correction in the deed that maybe wasn't made at some point in time. So we're trying to make sure we understand that fully. The other thing is I know after the meeting, I met with Howard and one of our residents that was there with us, and we talked about some smaller signage that could be put along Highland Avenue to maybe, mark the park a little bit better. And, not that we're trying to, again, bring people in that way, but at least for folks who do come in through that way, there's some wayfaring signage that, denotes that there's the park entrances on that side where they would go back onto Fairview and come through the park. And we also talked about enhancing maybe some of the dog signage. I think that's something we want to have a little bit more discussion on. I don't want to go throw a ton of new signs into the park, but I also want to make sure that it's effective, because I know folks are able to ingress and egress through the park through a variety of different locations. So, we don't really want to splash signs all over the place, but then again, if we can create a way that it's viewable, from key locations. And then just the one last thing I was trying to look into is I know we heard about potentially having an inclusive swing as part of the swing set that's there. So I'm seeing if that can be potentially retrofitted, at least for the time being, within the swing sets that are there. I know there's one with 2 bucket swings and then one with 2 belt swings. Maybe there's a way to replace one of the belt swings with an inclusive swing so that at least we have something, temporarily,
Right.
but functional for the resident that we heard from that lives in the area. And then ultimately, if the park improvements happen in another year, 2 years, depending on what our timeline is, at least we can, satisfy that resident. I think that would be a great thing to do and something that's common that we have in a lot of our other parks as well.
Okay. Well, thanks for all that information, Tim. Any questions or input from the board on this? Okay.
What would the likelihood be of borrowing more money if the residents came up with some great ideas and it ran into a substantial sum? Would the township consider borrowing money again or applying for grants?
I think we would consider all of those options and present those to the commissioners and ultimately see where that takes us. I know we have some other projects that probably could fit within that as well, and I think it's certainly something that is an option. But again, I think we would have to defer to the commissioners to make that vote.
Okay.
Is this, it's about Odoricio or? Sure, come on up to the mic, name, address, and, yeah.
Just comments on what she was just saying,
Sure.
because I was at that meeting. Hi, I am Jackie Baver. I live at 415 West Wayne Avenue, so I live across the street. I am shocked to see that when I just put the directions in for Odoricio Park, that it does take you to Highland Avenue and through Church, because I've lived across the street from the park for 25 years, and whenever they have big events there, I see no one parking down on those back ones hardly, like once in a while, but everybody parks up in those front ones. So I'm kind of amazed that with the advent of, Google Maps and stuff, that, that how they find the Wayne parking lots, but really, those are the ones that are used. So they must know. Since that meeting that I was at, I've been to several parks and seen the inclusive bigger swings, and I think that's a great idea. I love that. I've seen them different places, and I think, as you just mentioned, that would be a great thing to do. So I was looking at that.
Great.
I also looked today at the basketball court, seeing that it's getting closer. When I stood at the one end, I thought it was still a bit worrisome how it slants and drops off. Now, I'm not sure where the actual markings for the court will be, but I'm hoping it's safe because it's just that wooden fence there. And I'm no basketball player, so it's hard for me to say, so I'm not sure if kids, like the fence is good for catching the basketball, but I don't know if kids then will fall into the fence, if it needs guards or anything. I mean, my sons growing up played there, so I don't know. They would be able to give me more input, but I didn't get to talk to them. But I just hope with the way it kind of slants down in that one corner and then it drops off near the basket towards the parking lot, I hope it's safe. But I hope that was all considered and it's getting closer. And I did access the bathrooms. I tried to when I went to the meeting, and I wasn't able to open them. I just think the doors stick. So I tried the 1, 2, 3 code. I was able to open both. I looked inside. I go to a lot of different parks to play tennis, where they have, if we're lucky, a bathroom sort of like that, like some sort of thing. They're not usually locked with a code. And they pretty much are in about the same shape. We're just, as women playing tennis, we're just happy that there's a bathroom to access, and it's better than a porta potty. So I wasn't like appalled by the condition. I'm sure it could be, nicer, but there is 2 different bathrooms there, so that's to me, a great advantage. I am not sure I understand completely why we have a code and they're locked, but it's a simple code that everybody's supposed to know and share, so why is it locked? So I don't quite understand that. I wish it would be accessible to anybody using the park, not just for township residents that happen to know the code. But I was happy to see that the code worked. And like you were pointing out, Tammy, I thought that a lot of the different things were great ideas, like the spray ground and tetherball. I mean, there's a lot of good thoughts. And as I will always say, improving the parking lot so there's not the giant puddle. So I look forward to continuing with any of this stuff, but I just wanted to say I was trying to follow up on some of the things we've been talking about, and I'll continue to do it as more ideas are floated.
And
thank you.
And thank you, and please encourage your neighbors to contact us as well, or think about it.
Yes.
And let us know what their thoughts are.
I will try to get them. I know
Yeah.
some are interested and some are past, using the park so much, but I don't know. We live across the street, so it's our neighbors, so we want it to be the best.
Great, well, thank you very much.
Excuse me, Mary, can I
Yeah, sure, Howard.
comment? I walked along the park as well, and, starting backwards with some of the things that you were saying, I saw the trees as, the roots are starting to show on the hills there, and where the water's going down, I guess, and, starting to eat away there. And as far as the basketball court, me and Tammy looked over that, and the curb, the basketball is enough in so that the sloping curb where you saw, it shouldn't affect it. It's just, it's a couple of feet, but they wouldn't be on that corner for any real, I guess, effect on it. It's the basketball court, it's enough in, and the rim is in, and where the pole is and everything. So it's, the inbounds is far enough away from that hill there.
That's what I hoped.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
yeah,
Again, I'm not a basketball.
yeah. But where we're gonna have fun is running down on the side. Sometimes when the ball goes down the side and you're trying to catch it as it goes into the grass. One time I met my feet horizontally coming down there looking for the ball one time, but it's once you get up there and you start playing, they become very adaptive to the play, to the court there, so that's good. And the bathrooms, you do have to put your shoulder into it sometimes to get the doors open. But and you're right, it's not that bad,
Hey, I was just at a country club where you had to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that the door wasn't open. I said, no, it's just kind of small, and you gotta, we're there for a charity event. And I'm like, and you're a country club. So, believe me, I didn't think the bathrooms were that bad, really.
And
For now, yeah.
if I may, a couple things. First of all, I want to thank Public Works because they did go out and do some painting, as well as changing a lot of the fixtures and the door handles and things like that to spruce it up. So I know they did a great job. Actually, back in November, they really put a little bit of lipstick, if you will, on the comfort station, so we were happy about that. And I know they were checking on the door, because the door has been a consistent issue, so what we can look to do is put a sign on the door that tells people, you might need to use a little bit of strength, to open and or close the door. Same way when you're on the inside, too. I know that is the same case. You got to do it from the inside coming out as well, because it's heavy, and when it slams in, it sticks and it's heavy to open. So we'll take a closer look at that first thing.
Okay. Next up, well, we've talked about the Odoricio basketball court renovation project, so you can, if there's anything left to say, Tam, you can, but Cowan as well, the status of those?
They are currently underway, and I know they received their top coat, which is like a priming coat before the paint goes on. The player lines and things like that are going to be applied in within the next week. I know this weekend, actually on Saturday, they're going to do some work by putting up the rest of the basketball equipment at both sites. So the contractors will be on site, and I know we're coordinating with the users just to make sure there's not any interference. Folks know what's going on, and then hopefully soon the courts are going to be ready. I know we're still at least a few weeks out because the lines do need to cure and all that as well once they're applied. But the project is nearing completion, should be done soon.
Good, great. The capital budget, parks and facilities, the park impact fund allocation, what is new or left for us to discuss on that, Tammy?
I think the only thing is just, I think we made a commitment within that the 150,000 would go towards the Enke Park Playground project, which is moving along and underway. A lot of the equipment is on order. And then the balance of that fund, which is the 275,000, has been earmarked for Odoricio. So we know 125,000 of the 275,000 we know is per local development that will be applied. And the balance, this board, at least I know, made the recommendation that we would hold that money and apply that towards design. So the thought is as we move along and we start to narrow the focus on the potential improvements at the park and what those look like, we could use that money to go towards developing the design plan. And then, if there's money that's left over within that ends up ultimately getting applied towards the project, that would be wonderful. But at least I believe that was the recommendation made by this board. Unless there are any other projects that end up being brought forward, it seems where we stand right now is where that lands is on Odoricio. And then that would be separate from any potential capital planning for the 2023 township budget that will still lie ahead of us and take us back into that big document that we looked at a few months ago. If in fact we are moving towards a funding allocation towards capital for general parks capital moving forward, I think that will garner some discussion as the township budget process kicks off, which is generally in August, September. And then, of course, if there's discussions about borrowing, grant funding, things like that, those would move along throughout the fall as well.
Anybody on the board have any questions or comment or anything? Okay, Fenimore. Anything new on Fenimore?
We are
still
just waiting
waiting
for the report. We understand next week we'll have an opportunity to see the report, learn about the report, and all the great nitty-gritty details that I know we are so excited and on the edge of our seats to see. But the thought is then moving into July, that's going to take us into hopefully some more public discussion on Fenimore Woods. So I feel we're still in a little bit of a holding pattern until we get that information.
Can I ask just, when you say the report, what is the report?
We authorized a feasibility report for the Fenimore Woods stable to evaluate the potential development of it into a bathroom area and or storage and what that would look like given the conditions of the building in terms of a retrofit, and then outfitting it with sewer, water, electric, full code compliance, accessibility, et cetera. So we had authorized consultants to evaluate it, the hazardous materials that are potentially in and within it, and then come back and let us know relative to what we would want to see there, what that might cost to be able to do that, recognizing that our remaining bond funds are around $1.7 million, and that would potentially take up a portion of that if we were going to renovate the facility, so we can evaluate what that would look like relative to the remaining funds and then the remaining desired improvements at the park. So once we have that information, it seemed, that was a big cornerstone to determining how we move forward.
Anything? Okay, move ahead. Concerns about dogs in the Willows Park and trails. I know there's some new information, Tammy, you probably want to share with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, we continue to get some incident reports. I know there have been 2 in the last month, more formal and some anecdotal information. It sounds that the lack of clarification of the, folks within the Willows, I know in particular, folks believe that dogs are permitted within the Willows. So I think that's one area to continue to re-educate, clean up, further understanding. So whether that takes the form of signage, more social media, more, press and information that goes out there. I don't know, I almost feel like we have to hand all the dog users something, and give them something. But as we all know, it comes down to enforcement. That's really where the rubber meets the road. So there's still issues happening. We had a few incidents where dogs were off leash, and there have been some discussions among dog owners and hikers with children, where some of the dog owners believe it's a dog trail and that children shouldn't actually be on the trail. So that's sort of a latest one.
Yes,
and
I've been informed that too when I'm over there. I've been informed that the Willows is a dog-friendly park, and yeah. So there is definitely either truly a misunderstanding there, or people sort of pretend there's a misunderstanding there, or are taking advantage of the fact that regardless of what the rules are, it doesn't appear that they've been enforced for a while, and therefore it's not real.
Right.
And we all understand how people can pick up that perception. If something isn't enforced, it doesn't seem to be really, for real. So.
And we did have another situation where a woman was bit by a dog that was off a leash, so there was an incident report that was made. And our department, we've been encouraging folks to come and visit the Parks and Recreation Board and have the discussion and share their stories and share their comments. So we keep encouraging that, and we keep building our interest list, and encouraging, all the discussion publicly that we possibly can. I think maybe folks are just waiting for something a little bit more channeled to do that.
Yeah, Tammy, I should know this since I'm in the Willows like every 5 seconds. There used to be, maybe there still is, maybe it's been put back, a sign, a decent-sized sign, wood, whatever it was made of, that had some of the, right up front you drove into the park, and it said, Willows Park, this, that, the other thing, no pets. And did that disappear when they were putting in all, doing all the different things that have happened on that little stretch of entrance road there? It seems to me that we need some signage right up front that's very visible and very clear about, because it is clear, at least with the Willows Park, that dogs and other pets simply are not allowed. And I just, as time goes on, I just see more and more dogs there. For whatever reason, I guess people adopted a lot of dogs during the pandemic, and now they're bringing them out to the parks. We all know that it's a little murky on the trail, and we got to figure out how to clarify that. But I'm wondering if, how someone could tell me, no, dogs are allowed in the park when they drove through that entrance is sort of beyond me, unless they were just, assuming that I would be fooled by that or something. I don't think so. I think they actually weren't paying attention or didn't think there was a problem. And someone told me online it says it's a dog-friendly park, and I don't know where online. That wouldn't be our website. So there may be some misinformation out there, some other website that reports on parks and where dogs are welcome and stuff, and that there's incorrect info there. So I don't know how we find that out. I suppose we can do a little bit of a hunt, but, that's a problem. Because then people get really, what's the word I'm looking for, a little frustrated when you try to point out to them that maybe they shouldn't be playing Frisbee with their dog in the Willows. So clarity and signage, I think, where it's very visible, very obvious, very clear to the extent it is clear, would be helpful, I think. It won't be perfect, but it would be helpful, I think.
I just have a couple points. I found a survey that another township did on this. They put on SurveyMonkey, and I was going to send it to you guys because I think it's only 8 questions. We could post it on our website, on the Radnor website, but it starts out with like, are you a resident of Radnor Township? Which parks? And it has all of the parks. Then it says, do you own a dog or thinking of owning a dog within the next year? Yes or no? Would you support a revision for a park ordinance? It goes on with some questions, but I think it's really easy, very simple, and maybe we could think about doing, now that we have our new website up and running for Radnor, maybe we could try to even post the link for SurveyMonkey like on the website and let people fill it out and get at least some groundwork with how big this problem really is. I think it would help to at least put an identification on how many people actually know, because every person I ask at Clemacrone who has the dog with them, I'm like, are you aware that this is not a dog park? And they said, we just don't, we don't even pay attention. So I'll send this out to the board. These are just some samples that another township did on SurveyMonkey, these 8 questions. The other question is, you're right, there's a lot of misinformation, and I might be able to help to kind of pull together that misinformation, because it's just like Google Maps. If there's something inaccurate, it doesn't make it right? Like, there's a lot of information on the internet that's not accurate. The other question that I had, and Tammy, I just wanted to see, you may not know, but are the incidents reported, are they Radnor Township residents?
Some are and some aren't.
Okay, so I think that's another part, we've talked about that before, because then we do have some ability to kind of have some more control, as I would say. I don't know if signs would help, but I think maybe a survey would at least get, maybe even one of the survey questions would be, would you be interested in attending an in-person meeting in the fall to have a discussion about this? So I'll send this to the board as these questions. I just thought it was good this township did this just to gain at least some grounding for where we're at. But I think we have to start somewhere, and I think getting some data first might help.
Yes.
So that's all.
Yeah, I'm really interested in getting a lot, the input on this, because I know there's going to be, there's going to be a big divergence, and then a lot in between as well, and we just really need to start getting it. Sean, did you?
Yeah, just a quick point, to your point and Christina's point. Signage without enforcement actually, I think, hurts the situation. To your point, people will see it and say, well, we just don't care, and
Yeah.
they're going to feel comfortable in somebody else. So I think this is, I don't know if it's, unfortunately, it really is a police issue, especially, Tammy, like if you're going to have people getting bit by it and, with dog waste, and it's a health and safety, it's minor, but, that may be a quality of life. But if someone's going to get bit, and there's children there, that's definitely a concern. And again, to your point, it's not a kid optional park, or, it's a dog optional if you have it on a leash maybe. I don't want to repeat all my points before, but the big takeaway is signage without enforcement, I think, detracts from the situation.
If I could, Mary,
Yeah, go
one
ahead.
point, in all candor, every time I see this issue on the agenda, I feel like faking a hamstring injury to not come to these meetings. It's just an issue that there's no winner in it. I mean, if you look at it. And I just feel like we need to address it, and address it sooner, not sooner rather than later, but have a very concrete plan to address it, so we're not continuing to have it drag from meeting to meeting to meeting. I think the SurveyMonkey idea is a good start. I think what we should just, my humble suggestion would be that we pick a meeting day in the fall. I would say not have it be a special meeting, just so it doesn't run into other issues like Odoricio, like Fenimore, and get it publicized. I would say either October or November, so it doesn't run into conflicts with the beginning of school.
Right.
And get it out there, like, we're going to be addressing this issue. We're going to then be making whatever the board decides, whether it's recommendations for ordinance, or if it's just taking feedback, whatever our plan is based on feedback at this meeting. Your time to be heard is at this meeting. And just sort of address it head on and have it not linger as an issue. Otherwise, you know, it's going to be, we're going to keep hearing incidents, we're going to keep hearing issues, we're going to keep having opinions, and where we're not going to be moving the ball along. So I just, my suggestion would be that let's sort of draw some firm plans of how we're going to address it, when we're going to address it, and if people don't get, as long as we're comfortable with the way we're publicizing that meeting, if one dog owner from some part of the township's like, I didn't know, well, as long as we point and say, we gave you the opportunity, we're making decisions on this, let's just get it, decide, and move on. That's just my suggestion.
Tammy, are we in a, I mean, here you are in, what are we in? June. June. How'd that happen? Are we in a position now or soon to, I mean, I agree, and I think we all agree, we talked about this, to fix a time and do make it a special meeting like we did with Fenimore, and really get that nailed down?
I think we can, if we plan to even meet here, we have the schedule for the rest of the year, so we know when the building's, you know, the room is in use, so I think we can assign a date.
Okay. Yeah, I think maybe we need to sort of force the issue, I mean, really make it happen and commit to a date and do what we did with Fenimore, which, of course, as we now know, that's a useful approach. Get the people out and make sure we advertise it broadly.
I think we just need to have a summary or a statement of what is going to be discussed, because I think that's part of the issue, Andy, is that there's a lot of ambiguity about the topic in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, to break down the issues.
So I think maybe, you know, starting to construct that outline is important, and then that way that can be shared with people, that can be posted,
give
it
them a
can be
little
on social media.
framework, yeah.
Here are the topics.
Yeah.
Because I know we've drifted a lot in a lot of ways. I know we're focused on the Willows, but we've had other discussions about dogs in other parks
Well,
too, which
yeah.
may or may not come up along the way as well. So I think keeping it focused on, if it's just the Skunk Hollow Trail and the Willows, that would be my suggestion, is just to stay on that topic, you know, I wouldn't drift to the other parks. I know we were talking about Hartford a little bit in Cowan a couple meetings ago, and I would just try to really narrow the focus on what we're trying to achieve. And if it is an ordinance change, here's what we're contemplating, and actually outline that.
I think if it's an ordinance change, it probably has to be a little more comprehensive, because you're going to want to weigh all the different parks and all the things that are available and all the accommodations and all the restrictions and where they land and,
And it's going to become a game of whack-a-mole, though, basically.
I'm sorry?
It's going to become a game of whack-a-mole, I think, where, let's say we get, all right, we're deciding this is what's going to happen at Skunk Hollow and the Willows Trail, and then all of a sudden, Odorisio, we're going to put all this money into Odorisio, and all of a sudden there's going to be a conversation, or should there be dogs there? Clem McCrone, we already heard the state, you know, the conversations about that. I just think if we're going to address it once, let's, again, my suggestion, we're going to address it once, let's be comprehensive about it. Otherwise, it's going to bleed into other issues, and it's going to come, if we're going to do the Survey Monkey, I mean, I don't think, no, honestly, I don't think that's necessary if we're just going to keep it limited to the Willows.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The Survey Monkey, the one that I'm looking at, the other township did, they had you click on, they listed all their parks, you click on which ones you use, and then they can compile. But I think we take that data, and then we compile what we're going to talk about at the meeting, because we don't really, sometimes, I learned at Fenimore in all the discussions, sometimes we don't quite know exactly where we're going until we get people present, and then they bring it forward of what's important and what's driving them. So I think we send out the Survey Monkey, and we even offer, if there are folks that don't have access to internet, don't feel comfortable, that we will even mail them paper copy. They can mail it back to the township. I mean, we have to be creative. We have to put it on the parks. I would put, I mean, I would reach out and go big on this in terms of grabbing that data, then compile exactly what it is the people are saying. Like, we don't know what the people are saying. We have a few incidents. We've got some feedback from us. Let's get a real pulse on what the Radnor Township community says about these dog parks, or what they think they know about the dog parks. It's just my suggestion, and 10 questions on Survey Monkey, I think we can figure those out, and then boom, you draft your meeting for fall.
Does
Sorry.
that seem like something that's doable, Tammy? If we worked with you guys on tweaking something like that to suit our purposes? I mean, what's your reaction to that? I mean, does that sound like a good idea?
It does, I mean, yeah, I think the devil's in the details as
Yeah,
anything, so
always.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, I'll have to get after that devil then and work on those details. Do a little exorcism, do a little exorcism on that devil. I think I'd really be interested to see what that looked like.
Can I just follow up 2 questions or 2 points?
Yeah.
So I think the Survey Monkey, I think that's great. I think do that. I want to follow up. We're doing a comprehensive plan for the whole township, and I think dogs and parks is definitely important. Depending on which group we decide to go ahead and do that plan, they are going to talk about doing 10 or more breakout sessions with different residents, and I think that dogs and parks is definitely something that should be looked at as we try to reestablish. Every 10 years, you need to look and see what makes sense and what doesn't. So to your point, having that data, and then they can use that data to kind of direct them on their questions, I think is a great idea. So that is a great first start as we are interviewing and gathering our information on who we feel best can lead the township on what this comprehensive plan is in the future. And second, would it be beneficial, I know, Mayor, you're on the Willows Park Preserve. Could we get maybe Howard and Will here one meeting just to find out, and maybe even if they have a caterer signed as well? Because I want to hear what they have to say, because they're really the biggest stakeholders. I mean, the caterer, because like I said, if someone has a wedding and a dog destroys that wedding, that's their reputation, and that's a lot of money. So I really would love to hear, and you're definitely a great voice for them, but I would actually like you to hear it from, really from, at least from the caterer and those two. When we get to that point.
We get to
I think
that
that
point.
would be a big help.
Thanks. Anybody else have anything you want to add? Thank you, everybody, for your comments and stuff. Great ideas. I guess that's it for the dogs. Parks and Recreation Board member Park Steward Program update and discussion. I think last time, unless I made this up, I thought it would be a good standing agenda item for us to report anything that we are aware of going on in the parks for which we are stewards. Just so that we, keep in mind that we really need to be doing that and that we don't let stuff slide. And I don't know if anybody has anything specific to report on their assigned parks, anything that needs maintenance or tending to, or any problems. One thing I have for the Willows Park, which is one of mine, Tam, I think we've discussed this in the past too. Is there any room, do we have money anywhere to maybe do some minimal improvements to the crumbling or peeling paint on the entryway to the Willows? You know how you drive in there and there's the stucco walls, which probably need to be power washed or something, but there's also sort of wood trim and stuff, and it's black paint and it's kind of peeling, and it's, when I drive into the Willows, the Willows, it's the crown jewel. I mean, it's just the most beautiful park we have, and it's our pride and joy. But that first impression is really pretty poor. And I'm wondering how much it would take or what it would take. Could that be a Boy Scout project? I don't know. I mean, is that within our ability to spruce that up a little bit?
It's something that's been discussed. I know that we've met out there, we've looked, we've evaluated on site, and I know we actually are meeting internally to start to talk about the replacement and renovation of all of that, as well as the roadways and evaluating the parking lots and all of that.
roadways
So
too, yeah.
I know that that's definitely being discussed, but I can definitely look into see if there is a short-term fix that we can put
Yeah.
on that right away. Given it's the summer, it's busy, lots of groups are coming in and out. I know the WPP is having lots of events, so we can see if maybe there's an easy, quick fix to that.
Yeah, I would like,
just for
I
the
don't
time
know.
being.
I could look at it and I go, can't somebody get out there and scrape and paint and stuff? So obviously, there's more to it than that, but I'm thinking, God, maybe this is just a really, relatively minor thing that we could do to just make that that initial impression, a better one, more suited to the rest of the park. And, obviously, we'll fix the roads, and so we've done so many things, laying that, the sprinkler system and the water line through, that necessarily digs things up, and we'll get to that, I'm sure, fixing that up. But that front entrance, it would really be nice, we have these beautiful signs for all these other parks that we did a couple of years ago, but it would really be nice to have, if not something like that, at least not something that's more on the negative side now, which is like, really, this is the Willows? Okay.
We'll take a quick look, we'll
Yeah,
take a look
that'd
at
be
it
great.
right away.
That'd be great. Anybody else on that issue? No? We good? Public participation? Could it be that we're ready to adjourn? I think it could be. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second, anybody?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you, everybody. Got a lot done in a short time.
Thank you.